Welcome everybody to New York Sea Grants virtual seminar series. We're glad to have you with us today. Today's speaker is Dr. Peter Park, now at Farmingdale State College, and he's going to talk about a project that was funded by a small grants program. And his talk will be about the New York City East River Fish database. Before that, we're going to have our extension specialist, our Fisheries and Marine District extension specialist, Antoinette Clementson, who's going to describe the small grants program under which Dr. Park's project was funded, and she'll discuss give a presentation on that and some of the other projects that were funded. And she will introduce Dr. Park, and then we'll go from there. So Antoinette, welcome, and it's all up to you now.
Thanks, Lane, and welcome everyone for taking the time to join us just to learn a little bit about this exciting program that was launched in 2018, and I'm just trying to share my screen here. And I'm not quite sure why am I seeing this. Hang on, I think I shared the wrong screen. Why am I seeing this? Lane, what are you seeing?
I see stripes. So are you sharing a PowerPoint?
I'm trying to share a PowerPoint, but are you seeing it?
There it is. Now it's up. Now you can just start it. There you go.
I apologize. Yes, welcome for this talk about the one of the projects that was funded through the Marine and Coastal District Small Grants Program. And for those of you who are saying, well, what is that? You've never heard of it. I'm not surprised. It's relatively new to the district. And so I wanted to take a few minutes just to give an overview about, what it is, how it's funded, and just highlights the projects that were funded in the first cycle before turning over the podium to Dr. Peter Park. So, the small grant program was actually enacted through New York State Legislature, and I kind of grabbed the heading for this article that's contained in the laws of New York. And this is a grant that is available for eligible recipients include, groups that are included in conservation and education. And the whole goal is to try to promote marine conservation and education and stewardship in the Marine District. This legislation also enacted the, and I'll just call it MCD for short, the Marine and Coastal District, which is a mouthful, so we say MCD. So the legislation also enacted the research board to have oversight of this small grant program. And the board, it's comprised of 3 members. Each is appointed from one each from the New York State Senate, one from the Assembly, and there's also a position for the DEC. Each legislative representative, there is an alternate in case of the need of, to address conflict of interest. So, that was acknowledged. So this board, as I just mentioned, has oversight for this program. And the program is actually funded entirely through the Marine and Coastal District license plate, which was released in, we think it's around 2001. It's going back some years, and I'm still trying to get a definite date for this, but we think from the records that it was around 2001 that this license plate was introduced. And this was introduced to support this small grants program. So you're asking, well, what is the Marine and Coastal District license plate? Good question. So it's this license plate that I have grabbed the image there. And so that's what it looks like. Uh, we also try to make the distinction because there is a similar license plate that's out there at the DMV. As you know, there's so many license plates to choose from, but this one that funds our program, you look for, it has the striped bass, as you can see, but I put that arrow, that little image in the background. It's supposed to be, well, it is the Montauk Lighthouse, and we try to make that distinction, you know, to the public who we're trying to encourage to support this fund. The cost, I just grabbed this from the DMV website. You know, the table is there. So it's, you know, pretty affordable once you make that initial investment. And the important thing is that this is going to a good cause. And I'm going to try to just highlight some of the programs that have been funded, you know, to date. At the bottom, I've put the URL, but if anyone's interested in subscribing to this license plate, you know, you can reach out to me and I can give you the information, you know, to direct you to the correct license plate, because as I said, there are others that are very similar, but, you know, we want you to invest in this specific plate. So the process that was leading up to the work that Dr. Park is going to talk about momentarily. It was more or less a 2-year process, maybe a little bit longer, but this started out first because these are state funds. The DEC and New York Sea Grant had to go through the process of formalizing, you know, an agreement or an MOU. And that gave Sea Grant the responsibility of working with the Marine and the MCD board to try to pull together and design this program and to also administer the grant process. So in around fall 2018, we released the RFP, which is a request for proposal. And in that document, and I'm using the royal wheels really on behalf of the MCD board, the eligible candidates to receive the funding were 501c3 entities based in New York State. The board also established a ceiling for these awards of $15,000. So for that first cycle that we had, we received 33 applicants, of which one was ineligible. I think that one was out of state, so that disqualified, you know, that application. And another one was deemed incomplete in terms of the supporting documents that were required for the application package. So we had a grand total of 31 applicants, which we submit for technical review. So we pulled together a technical review panel, which was comprised of Sea Grant educators, staff from NOAA. We had some key representatives from New York State recreational fishing industry. You know, they all got together and they reviewed the documents, and we provided them with a guidelines in terms of ranking and scoring, you know, the proposals. So from that technical review, we generated a short list of about 15 applicants, and that was put in recommendations to the MCD board to make the final selection. Of that 15, the board decided to select 6 finalists, and that resulted in a commitment of just under $75,000. So the plan was to have those proposals to complete a 1-year cycle to do their work, with the possibility, you know, on a case-by-case basis to have a no-cost extension, or NCE as we use in our field. So most projects started in or around fall 2019. Some started a little bit earlier, depending on the contract and their ability, you know, to do work. So I've talked about the Marine and Coastal District, and I just thought that it would be a good idea just to show an image of what the boundaries are. So I got this map from the DEC's website. So that pink outline, that is our Marine and Coastal District. It goes all the way up, if you can see this, just south of the Tappan Zee Bridge. So the asterisks that you see here represent the approximate location for the projects that were funded. So as you can see, the board in their deliberations and final selections, they try to have some fairly decent geographic coverage for, you know, these small grants. So, you know, they did a very good job in trying to be sensitive of, you know, the need to, I don't want to say spread the money around, but try to have work done, you know, throughout a significant range of our marine and coastal districts. So what are some of the projects, what are the projects that were funded? I'm sorry, there's something in my view side here, so I have to move it. So I have here a list of all the finalists, and as you can see, and I'll just go through them very quickly. We had Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County Marine Program. They had the Sports Fishing Frenzy project, which was meant to provide marine education classes to youths in underserved communities. We had Long Island Traditions doing their first-hand fishing, which allowed that organization to teach fishing traditions in elementary schools, and they did work at Tobay Beach, and you know, very exciting. Brentwood School District also did some wetland restoration work, which was very exciting. The Lower East Side Ecology Center, they're based out of Lower Manhattan. They got funding to enhance their public fishing clinics along the East River. The Friends of the East Harlem Esplanade, they did an interesting and very unique project, which was trying to introduce infrastructure for anglers, the Harlem Bait Station project, and the Brooklyn Conservancy, in conjunction with Dr. Park's department, they created the East River Fish Data Group, which we'll hear from momentarily. I will say there were two projects that were kind of impacted by COVID. And again, it's just as a result of the nature of their work. Their scope of work really entailed working with the public in very close and interactive you know, programs. So as we all know, COVID kind of disallowed those kinds of engagements. So, you know, unfortunately, they experienced a little bit of setback, but nonetheless, we did have some things to report in terms of progress. So I put together a collage of you know, the different activities up here in the corner. This is the bait station, and this, what's unique about the bait station is it's ADA compliant, which is very unique, you know, and also the location right there in the city in Harlem on the Esplanade. Les Ecology Center, they had their mobile fishing clinic, so they were moving around their rods and offering fishing classes in the city, in addition to other programs. Long Island Traditions, they had fishermen doing fishing tradition work at Tobay Beach, and they were also in the elementary schools. This Brentwood School District, this is a picture of them in the marshes. They were doing work looking at a natural compound that could act as a kind of like a glue to retain soil, you know, for wetlands, to help with conservation. They also launched the Let's Science That website, which is a series of podcasts talking about their science. And last by no means least, this is a picture of, you know, one of the classes that was facilitated by Cornell Cooperative Extension. I'd just quickly like to touch on some of the highlights and accomplishments through these different projects. And as you can see, it's a very long list. The bait station, it was very unique, and they actually received an architecture award from the Masterworks Design for Park Amenities. They got the best new infrastructure, and they're also now on a long list for another architecture award. Brentwood School District students, they were finalists in the Samsung Solve for Tomorrow National Science Competition. Although they didn't win, they did you know, make the final professionals, and they had a $15,000 award, which is interesting because that actually represents the ceiling that they received under the small grant funding. I also mentioned their Let's Science That weekly podcast, Long Island Traditions. You can see clearly, you know, some of the numbers of students that they were able to intercept. It was very exciting. I did attend one of the elementary students' school workshops. You know, it was really fascinating. And, you know, less ecology, they did their, you know, their classes, and they managed to do some beach cleanup, etc. So I'd just like to take this time to, on behalf of the board, just to congratulate the project leaders on the work that was done. And all of this was working together to promote recreational fishing conservation. And the board is very pleased with the accomplishments. And one project that I've deliberately not really mentioned is going to be, we're going to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about that work. And we have Dr. Peter Park, who started out at Nyack College, and now he's moved to SUNY Farmingdale. He's a little bit closer. So without any further ado, I will unshare my screen, and I will try to, let me see if I can unshare my screen here, stop share. Yes, so Peter, you should be able to share your screen now. And thank you so much, Pete, for taking the time to talk a little bit more about your work creating this East River Fish database.
Unmute yourself, Peter.
Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you for that amazing introduction to all the programs. It's really humbling to be here and to represent the Small Grants Program and represent my partners, my colleagues who really did this work. I'm here just expressing my gratitude and just conveying a lot of the work that was done in collaboration with so many people. Can you hear me out there? Okay. Just to confirm, I have until 1 o'clock, right? So if I go over, I'll just kind of stop where, where I'm at. Okay. So this is the title of the talk, From Anchovies to Mangrove Snapper, the origin story of the New York City East River Fish database. And at the onset, I want to acknowledge my collaborators and co-partners in preparing the grant, Isa Del Bello and Christopher Giorgenti. The three of us put together this grant, and I'm the one giving the talking, but I'm gonna, in a second, I'm gonna show you what they look like so you have a face to go with the names. The title of the talk says Anchovies to Mangrove Snapper. So in case you're curious, okay, that's an anchovy and that's a mangrove snapper, and they're gonna make a cameo in the talk. So have your eyes, ears, and your fins ready, because when they do show up, hopefully it'll put a smile on your face. And there are my co-presenters. Okay, so that's Isa, Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy, and there's Chris, Randall Island Park Alliance. And it's the three of us who wrote the grant, but you'll see the number of partners and participants in what we did with this work is way more than just the three of us. And it's really humbling to just be here and to present this work to you, to all of you out there. Right, so this work was funded by the Marine and Coastal District Conservation Education Research Project Small Grant. And I will say this from the beginning, although it's a small grant, there's nothing about the grant that's small. It opened so many doors and it unlocked such potential in our local ecosystem, the East River, in ways that it still kind of gives us a moment's pause and just like, it's humbling and it's awe-inspiring, and to think that we did this in 1 year. So I just want to thank the board. I want to thank Sea Grant and DEC for really putting this grant together. It's the first of its kind that brings together, angling, and we implemented research. And so just, again, thank you for the opportunity to enable us to do this work, and hopefully you'll enjoy this presentation. So this is a picture of the New York City skyline in Manhattan, and here are some fish that you will see in the talk. Here's the outline of the talk. So this is an origin story, an origin story of what we're calling the East River Fish Database or the East River Fish Project. I'm going to begin by talking about kind of the context, because the work, although what we did here was accomplished in 2019, there's a huge background and backstory and context that goes into what happened in 2019. I mean, it's at least a decade in the making. And so I'm going to set the stage, introduce you a little bit to the East River, if you're not familiar with New York City's East River, and then mention a little bit about the existing community science programs that were present before. And then we'll talk about how the grant really galvanized and gave us an opportunity to develop this project. And then we'll jump into the details of the grant unfunded project itself, beginning with the database and then describing the other elements that the grant funded. So we also were able to initiate fishing clinics, what I would consider pretty unique fishing clinics, and workshops. And then I'll conclude with a couple of comments about future directions. And just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I was born in Flushing, Queens, and I grew up in the city. I mean, I'm a city kid through and through, and I used to go fishing in the East River. Back in elementary school, I remember, taking the train, going to the East River, Astoria Park, and catching fish there. And so this is more than just a project. This is kind of a dream come true for me and a lot of my colleagues in this talk. So I'm really, really grateful to be sharing this with you. All right, so let's set the stage. What is the East River? Here's a picture of it outlined in yellow. It's technically not a river. It's actually a saltwater tidal strait. And in general, it's considered to be able to be navigated through its entire length, but there are parts of the East River that are, like a roaring river, so you have to be careful. But in general, you see boats go through it along its entire length. It connects the Hudson River, it connects the Long Island Sound, and connects to New York Harbor, New York Bay, which connects to the Atlantic Ocean. So it is a hub of sorts of other ecosystems, and it is a passageway for many fish, and it's also a breeding ground and nursery for many aquatic animals. The one thing, though, that's really special about the East River, it's unparalleled urban views. Where else in the world can you get fishing pictures like this, right? So just take a look at the background. You got Brooklyn Bridge. These are my friends, Kellen and Isan. This is my friend, Mike. This is behind here. This is close to UN building. I'm a fisherman through and through, so I'm not going to give away exact locations. This picture right here is a friend of mine, Joshua. He caught this striped bass in front of the Throgs Neck Bridge. And so the grant, the mission of this project was to bring together community science, angling, and fishing charter operations to really do something that we thought was unique, and not only just bringing the communities together, but join forces to collect data and do research together. Okay, so hopefully I've made the case, why study the East River? Well, it's a convergence of a really an amazing array of waterways, but we also hope that any kind of work along the lines of community science can help monitoring efforts in broader systems that have been actively studied and monitored, like in general, the East River is part of the Hudson River estuary. We also want to be able to definitively answer common questions asked by New York City residents, because many of us in this talk interact with the public very, very frequently, and there often are some common questions in many cases where we don't have exact answers to, and so hopefully this work kind of revealed some of that for us, and I'm going to share some of those answers to those questions today. And then also we were interested, many of us are educators, and so we were also interested in possibly utilizing this work to develop resources for education and teachers and environmental educators. And lastly, why the East River? I had mentioned that there is context. There is a rich background and history of existing environmental education work. And there are many environmental education organizations that already have established public programs before 2019 and fishing clinic programs. And so it seemed like the timing was right for all these reasons that I list here. And these are the organizations that participated in this project and in this work. And all of them have and do work along the East River. So I wanted to acknowledge our partners from the get-go here. So that's an intro to the East River. What about the fish community science and the history of that along the East River? So what you see here, I'm going to show you two slides. One is a rich history of fish community science that has been around the East River. I list fish counts and bioblitzes on the right. Day in the life of the Hudson River and harbor takes place along the whole Hudson River estuary, and the East River is a part of that. And since 2003, East River contributions have been recorded since then. The Hudson River Estuary Great Fish Count since 2013, and the World Science Festival Great Fish Count since 2015. Now these three listed are public. They're one day in the months that are noted there, and they're spearheaded by Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and the DEC, and the World Science Festival obviously hosts the latter one. Also along the East River, there has been some work along the lines with bioblitzes. And so Macaulay Honors College puts on annual bioblitz throughout the city, different parks and different places. And the East River was featured 1 year. And so their bioblitzes take place in September. And so you could see here, going back many years, there's a lot of work already being done by many of the organizations that already have their footprint on New York City's East River. The East River also has a rich history of fishing clinics going back many years. So Battery Park, Lower East Side Ecology Center, Randall's Island, and the Region 2 office of DEC, they have been hosting fishing clinics for years. And so I want us to kind of keep all that in mind, that there are research programs, community science programs, and fishing clinics that have been happening for years. And this is where the MCDL grant comes in. And so if I were to pick a slide or an image that kind of brings together what I say because through many conversations with the people that you'll see in this talk, it became quite clear that many of us had a common vision that kind of was focused on something like this, looking at the fishes, bringing together environmental education, bringing together the angling community, and applying that to research. And so if you can remember this image, this kind of sets the stage for what the database project is all about. So in 2019, we got funding for our project, as mentioned wonderfully by Antoinette. This work, basically our commitment was to do three things. One, develop a fish database, and an East River fish database that brought together those communities, environmental educators, anglers, and also we recruited fishing charter captains. We got amazing data from them as well. We also intended to develop unique fishing clinics that were tailor-made to the communities in which they were held. And then in the winter, COVID kind of put a stop to part of this. We had planned 3 workshops. We did end up having 2 of them, and I'll share a little bit about what those were about. And those were taking place in the winter to kind of keep the interest going off season. So we started with 3 organizations and three authors for the grant. And in terms of environmental education organizations, that quickly ballooned to 10. And this is not, that number 10 does not include the countless anglers and fishing operations that also participated in this work. So who makes up the East River group? And we came up with an informal group, just so it becomes a mouthful to say all of the organizations. We call ourselves, again, informally, the East River Ichthyological Alliance, or ERIA. Okay, so I'm going to use that phrase to basically describe what I'm going to show you in this next slide. Okay, so we have this East River fish database, And the East River Fish Database Project brings together 4 separate sort of elements. And I'm going to show you each of these elements separately in turn, and then show you a summary slide of who our contributors are. So first, we have the environmental educators. And these are our environmental educators. And as mentioned, there has been a lot of rich history of pre-existing programs that are focused on fish. And many of these programs, the methods that were utilized to get fish data are shown here on this slide. There are public seining programs. Seining involves the participation of 2 or more individuals, skilled professionals who go in the water and they drag a very large net, 15 to 30 feet long, that sweeps an area, typically a beach, to catch and record and to identify and take pictures of fish in a survey style approach to collecting data. There's also trapping that comes in a variety of different goals, and there are different types of traps. For example, here, this is a minnow trap. This is a G minnow trap, but many of the sites have traps on site within which they collect data, very important data on fishes and marine invertebrates. And also fishing clinics. Although fishing clinics may not traditionally be seen as a data collection type of method than compared to, for example, seining, fishing clinics are, you're collecting data, you're getting sometimes unique data that the other 2 approaches don't get. For example, through fishing clinics, you get larger fish, predatory species, and sometimes you get some really cool, unique catches. And many of the programs along the East River have been keeping really detailed records on what they're catching during their fishing clinics. This is a summary slide of the different programs, the environmental education organizations, and those approaches that they have on site. And so data for the East River Fish Database Project comes from in terms of the environmental education group, there is this information, this wealth of information that has already been sort of refined through their specific programs and then are being brought into this common database. And so this is one element of the database. All right, so another instrumental group of contributors to the data for this database are recreational anglers. And so this is an image of a subset of anglers. These are anglers who I know personally, who we have pretty strict methods for submission for data. I know all of our anglers personally, or I've gotten to know them in 2019. And so, you know, for example, if data was going to be contributed, there had to be a picture, there had to be scale, and we didn't need to know exact locations because those of us who fish know that you don't give away locations, but we had methods to kind of get in that described in a very practical way information that is sort of regionally specific, and I'll explain those methods in a subsequent slide. So we had anglers who were contributing, and in many cases we gave kits to help identify and record information as necessary or as available. And so provided in the angler kits was a map of the East River describing what we call zones of study. And so if an individual caught a fish at a particular park, but that angler does not want to give away the actual park, if they're comfortable, they can give away the zone in which that fish was caught. And that's kind of how we partitioned a lot of the data that we collected. And so we keep the fishing spot secret, but we still get enough information that might be useful from a sort of global ecological perspective of what's going on in the East River. Waterproof booklets, rulers for those images, for those pictures. And like I said, the timing was perfect because almost everyone has a phone or something to take a picture with on site. And so we didn't include any catches that didn't come with a photograph when it came to our anglers, and it worked out pretty well. Right, so what are some of the catch methods that our anglers provided? Obviously, the angling itself. Sometimes trapping. Sometimes anglers will catch minnows and stuff with their traps. Cast netting in rare occasions, and dip netting. And so these were some of the approaches that were implemented by anglers. Another instrumental group of data contributors were fishing operations. And not many people who don't fish may not know this, but there is a really cool history of commercial and for-hire fishing operations in the East River. Still today, but in the past, just the stories I've heard of the kinds of fishing operations that were around in the East River are just, it's remarkable. Today, there are more than the groups that are listed here, the businesses that are listed here, but I have here Never Enough Fishing, Real Mayhem, Soundbound, and Capital Fishing. They all have charter operations that either are docked and occasionally fish in the East River. And so whenever there was interesting data, sometimes if I asked or if the captains were willing to share, we were able to get really neat information with photo documentation. Also, I want to acknowledge in this fishing operations group, fishing clubs, because fishing clubs were instrumental in our fishing clinics because they provided expertise and guidance and support in a lot of the public programs that were taking place, mostly onshore. But some of our club members joined us on boat fishing trips as well. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And so as you can see, this project is doing more than just collecting data. It's bringing together communities that all share one thing in common. They all love fish. Another way we got data is we sort of browsed the web and looked at social media and either our Facebook friends or to-be Facebook friends. We found some really cool observations that were confirmed with follow-up and phone calls and things like that through apps like this, Facebook, Instagram, and iNaturalist. And so there you have it. You have the East River Fish Database. You see the contributors. This is a Venn diagram. There's overlap everywhere. And databases is, you're going to see data in a moment, but I just wanted to tell you this data would not be possible without the people involved. The people who love their East River. One fun thing I can share is that we started a contest, like so for 2019, for the environmental education organizations, we had a annual, what is your most significant East River Fish Award contest. You had to submit a picture and a little blurb about why it was significant, and there's this trophy. I just want to acknowledge our 2019 champions, and we're gonna have a 2020 sort of call for submissions. But you know, doing things like this really are meaningful in so many ways. And just reading the submissions, I remember in 2019 we had like an anonymous panel for voting and stuff. It was really encouraging, especially during the winter when the season's over, to kind of keeping that dream alive that we'll do this again next year. And this might even inspire us, for example, to improve our methods or get better data and things like that. So we had little morale boosting mechanisms in place as well to kind of think about the long term, beyond 2019. And so hopefully you can see that the small grant brought together communities, and now I'm about to share with you some of the data. Right? And so this is an image, a colleague of mine, Anna, she's a professional illustrator. She created this drawing for us of the zones that I had mentioned before. And so before I show you some data plots, I wanted to introduce you to what we were calling the different zones of study. Now, generally speaking, these zones were separated by some kind of landmark. Whether it's a bridge or a tunnel. And in other cases, in most cases as well, coincidentally, these zones also, each of the zones, not all of them, but in most cases, there was an environmental education organization that was within that zone, and to try to get as much representation in terms of data contributions. And so you can see here, we had listed 10 zones for what we're calling, what we were kind of defining as, quote, the East River, but this helped a lot for data analyses. And so I'm going to show you a couple of plots. I'll give you a moment to kind of process these different zones. Okay, so here are the zones again. And what you have here is a plot of what the best we could do to describe effort. So we have this term here, sessions, which basically are outings, like how many times was there either an event or a fishing outing. Now this data pools environmental organization data, angling data, and charter captain data, and social media data. So this is everything is pulled here, and you can see the different zones that are listed. And you can see that some zones were more heavily studied than others. And again, sessions is thought of as a very, very simplistic measure of effort. Moving forward, you'll see in the future direction slide, one of the things that we definitely want to refine further is describing effort and seeing if there are ways to align and standardize effort across these zones. But we did the best we could with the data that we have. And so just to show you, like zones 3 and zones 9, there was a considerable amount of outings that kind of gives you context for the next slide I'm about to show you. And so this next slide, on the x-axis, you have zones again, and these are the number of species. Okay, so just species richness, we're not looking at abundance here, the number of species that were documented. Now these are number of species per site, and so there was a lot of redundancy. Many same species were caught across zones. But what this does reveal also is some of the understudied sites. So for example, like zone 4A, we just don't have much data there because they're really in terms of access or an organization or fishing opportunities there just wasn't much. But it's a lot of coverage area in the East River. So that was an interesting insight that we there are certain zones that we're curious about. In part, we don't have much data because maybe there was limited access, for example, or we just didn't know the right people. But overall, you can see we quite zone 9, zone 3, above 20 numbers of species. That's pretty good. Those are, I think, they're pretty good numbers, and we're gonna delve into those numbers in a little bit. All right. So, which species did we find in the East River in 2019? I'm sure everyone's curious about that. To kind of frame this contextually, I'm going to show you a trophic pyramid. Right. So, on the bottom of the food chain, you have phytoplankton that can get consumed by zooplankton. Small fish eat the zooplankton, and large fish eat the small fish, and then larger fish eat the larger fish. And there are other. This is a very simplistic description, but I do this so that I can show you some pictures of fish and give you some context. All right, so let's look at the small fish first. So I'm just going to show you pictures. I won't have time to go over each species. I could probably give an hour talk on each of the species that are listed here. I'm just going to show you some pictures. So these are considered forage fish or small fish. You have to also remember in this group are often juveniles and larval fish of large predatory fish, but these are traditionally thought of as small fish as adults. And hey, it's me, Anchovy, right? So he was in the title of the talk. So there's the cameo. Larger fish. So the DEC, you can get you can register for the marine fishing registry that allows you to fish along this body of water. And those who fish know that there is this term called sport fish, which are fish that are caught for sport. Generally caught and released in the East River, but there are regulations as to what types of fish could be harvested based on specific size restrictions that are stringently maintained. And so if you're curious, you could look up sport fish fishing regulations and see which fish size and who can and should or are able to eat these larger fish. That information is available online through the DEC website. But these are pictures. I should mention all these pictures are pictures of East River fish in 2019. So among the larger fish that were notable, we recognized, striped bass, bluefish, sea robin, particularly in the northern stretches of the strait. And then I guess I could spend an hour talking about each of these fish, but there are a fair number of sport fish in the East River. And then we had some unexpected catches. So here's like a northern puffer. This is a conger eel. A conger eel is typically associated with deeper waters, but this was caught in near the Lower East Side Ecology Center. You have a skillet fish, spotted hake, naked goby, feather blenny, and some giant summer flounder, and some giant scup porgy, and a big bass, striped bass. And then we also documented 3 tropical strays like this butterfly fish here, gray snapper, and a little baby cobia. And the gray cobia, the gray snapper is also called a mangrove snapper. And so the reason when we put the talk together, we wanted to have a fish with A and a fish, obviously that started with Z, but then, you know, it kind of, just picking a fish that has a letter that is at the end of the alphabet doesn't quite capture the beauty of the data that we saw. These are tropical strays, meaning these are fish that are not born in the East River. These are fish that are born in tropical waters or warmer waters at southern latitudes that have been swept up. Generally, understanding is these fish get swept up by the Gulf Stream and they land here. And unfortunately, in most cases, a lot of these tropical strays as juveniles, they don't survive the winter. But every year you get a handful of really interesting fish that you don't expect to see appear in our local waters. And so this was definitely one. This mangrove snapper was caught at the World's Fair Marina in Flushing in a trap. And I couldn't believe my eyes. It was in one of the traps that I would observe. And I knew the fish because I know of this fish, but it's definitely not a New York City native. And just the thought of how long these fish traveled to get here and to cross paths with you is just, and that's why I chose the gray snapper as a fish for the title, to kind of get at, there are local fish, there are visitors, and there's a story that's taking place underneath the water that you just, if you're not looking, you may miss. So that's just some general data. Now, how well do you think you know our East River? So I'm gonna ask a question, and obviously I can't take answers because this is a virtual webinar, but if I were to ask, and I should say, these are those kinds of questions that New York City residents often ask the environmental educators. And so now we have some answers. And we could say in 2019, blank, 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 like we know, like blah, blah, blah. We know that this is a number based on our efforts. Question number one, in 2019, how many total species of fish do you think we caught in the East River? I'll take a pause, think about it, probably have a number. We documented 47 different species. Question number two, does catch method matter? Remember, we're pulling data from anglers, from programs that are using seining. Some anglers are using cast netting and trapping. This next slide indicates that method absolutely matters. Now, I wish I had more time to go into this data a little bit more, but there are many cases where seining was the only method that caught particular species of fish. And in many cases, fishing clinics were the only catch methods, angling or fishing clinics, that saw certain species of fish that seining did not record. And so what you're looking at here is a pie graph indicating just species that were caught by these different methods. Now, the same species could have been caught by different methods. In each case, in each of those cases, those independent cases, we treated them as independent occurrences. But for the most part, trapping, angling, and seining accounted for most of the catches. There was some professional field observations that were documented, dip netting and cast netting, but clearly this is just the tip of the iceberg. But if you really mine the data, you realize that there are lots of fish that if we didn't have all of these approaches available to us in 2019, we definitely would have missed a lot of the catches. Like, for example, the conger eel was only caught with hook and line. A feather blenny only through a trap. The list goes on, and I have to be mindful of time, so I don't want to lose myself talking about fish, and that's not related to the talk. What was the biggest fish of 2019? You already saw a picture of it. That's my friend Mike, a very good friend of mine. He is a really, really good angler, and we were on a fishing trip together. And this is a striped bass. This one in particular in 2019, it measured about 39 inches, and it was about 26, 27 pounds. And it was, I'm not going to give away the exact location, but it was in the vicinity of the UN building. And if I were to ask you, what time of year do you think this is? It was pretty much like now. It was around Thanksgiving. This fish was caught, but pretty much everyone wasn't fishing anymore. And so it's those mysteries and realizing there's these really just tremendous fish that are cruising our waters that, again, we can overlook if we don't think to look in the water. And this was caught aboard Never Enough, the fishing charter. What was the most unusual fish of 2019? Each area, each zone had their own unique catches. And I'm just going to highlight, based on environmental education organizations, some of the really, really cool fish that were caught at each site, because it's really hard to localize just one species for the whole river. All right, so Lower East Side Ecology Center, seeing an American conger eel, again, a fish that's typically associated with deeper waters. And I fished the East River a lot, and I was struck to that there was a conger eel that was caught within the East River. I'm used to seeing them being caught offshore, off wrecks in the south shore off the south shore of Long Island, in much deeper water. But this fish was caught near the Williamsburg Bridge, if I'm not mistaken. The person to ask is Kellen Stanner. He took that photo. This is a feather blenny, very beautiful fish with gorgeous eyelashes, very small. They were caught in a trap, and it's another fish you don't see every year. And they're just look at them. They're beautiful. Hickory shad in June. That usually you see hickory shad in the. Actually, let me mention the feather blenny was caught from the New York State Parks Recreation and Historical Preservation Group. The hickory shad in June. There was a hickory shad that was caught in June by Battery Park City Authority during one of their Go Fish fishing clinics. And in general, this is a fish as an adult that you expect to see in the fall, but it was really interesting to see it in June. And of the many years that they've been running their clinics, they hadn't seen this fish before, and so it's another rare one. It's not a non-native, but it is. It was unexpected. Grubby sculpin, Alley Pond Environmental Center. That fish was caught near the Drog's Neck Bridge. City Parks Foundation Coastal Classroom caught a tremendous amount of northern pipefish in Astoria, and Atlantic needlefish, if I could pick one, which was a showstopper for public programs in 2019 for Brooklyn Bridge Park. So needlefish are really cool because they look like a needle. Randall's Island Park Alliance, that puffer fish right there was the winner. That was the winning submission for that annual most significant fish of the year of the East River for that group. And 4-spine stickleback at World's Fair Marina. So it's a really small fish. I studied 3-spine stickleback for my dissertation research. And so I was really excited to first hear about stickleback in the spring, but I had never actually seen them in the East River until we started looking for them. And they were early, like April, May, cold water, we saw them. And so that's the database. And the database initially is in the form of a spreadsheet, but we are actively trying to get it online, and that takes a lot of time, especially with the complexity of the data that we have. I want to acknowledge my friend, colleague, Andrew Hong. He's a very talented software developer, and he's helping us put this information in a way that hopefully will be accessible, and in terms of functionality and just practical use. And I want to just give you some screenshots of what this is looking like, but just know that this is still very much a work in progress. Right? So there's a reference table with different species of fish that are listed. That is the base for how we enter data. And there's graphing features. And so there's lots of fun stuff on the horizon. I'm just going to leave it at that. So we do have the data. It's in spreadsheets, and those spreadsheets are being implemented into an online platform currently. And I'm looking at the clock here, about 5 minutes. And so I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about the clinics and workshops, because those were instrumental elements that also were funded by the MCDL grant. And so really quickly, the fishing clinics that were funded through the grant can be categorized in 2 ways: beginner level and intermediate level. And within beginner level, we had Brooklyn Bridge Park and World's Fair Marina. And then for the intermediate level, which we thought was really cool because the East River hadn't seen those before, having a public clinic that is a step above a sort of entry into the angling hobby. This intermediate level clinic was experimented and explored at Randall's Island Park Alliance. So on this slide here, note on the upper left, you have a difficulty scale, okay, and the focus here is highlighted. So the focus for the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy beginner level fishing clinics was generally to introduce the public to fishing. It involved 30-minute sessions. There was only a limit of like about roughly 2 hours, and there was so much demand for these clinics that we had to, the great folks at Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy and their ed team organized just a dazzling sort of not only layout, but just operations to appease the hundreds that were interested in these clinics. 30-minute sessions. That's all that people had. 30 minutes, but it's really like 25 minutes because there was a 5-minute demo on how to use equipment because many of our anglers had never touched a rod before, and so lots of photographs. Photographs were taken, with photos of the people who caught them. Like after you catch a fish, people would pull out their phone. We take pictures for them. So it was really fun. In terms of the equipment, we used spinning rods with, everyone had common bottom rigs, same rig, same setup. In terms of guidance, we had lots of support. Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy ed team, the Conservancy staff, local anglers came out as volunteers, many of whom were friends of mine, and a fishing club, the 18 Fishing was there present, and there were lots of student volunteers as well. And much of what was learned here, I want to acknowledge New York State DEC, I Fish New York program at the Region 2 office, because they came out and did a program called Train the Trainer to train all of us on how they run their clinics, and they've been doing it for years. They're the pros at it, and we, based on what we learned and knowing who the community is in and around the park, we're able to use that foundation and then tweak it a little bit so that it best fit our community. Highlights from that event. I don't have time to go into all of them. Oh man. Okay, but I'll mention on the news, and lots of smooth dogfish were caught, and so kids were running around singing Baby Shark while people were catching small dogfish. At World's Fair Marina, we had fishing clinics that were similar in style, but the mode and the feel was different. And just in terms of highlights, lots of blue crabs were caught. Our participants actually got to interact with a local charter captain who docks his boat by World's Fair Marina. And this is generally an underutilized site. There was fishing, but no one really thinks about fishing there. And I think it's the first time there was a fishing clinic there. And so we ran 2 clinics. And one thing I want to highlight about this that was really, really special was that the Department of Health provided us a lot of materials about the fisheries and consumption advisories in multiple languages. And you can see we're very diverse. Many of us actually sort of found each other fishing. We each kind of fished on our own growing up, because being children of immigrants, sometimes you have a hobby, and we didn't know each other at the time, but we all had our own hobby. We sort of found each other in our later years and put on this program. And there were many participants who came that couldn't speak English, but there was one person among us at the very least that could speak in their native language. And really, we were able to accommodate in ways that was just really beautiful to see. The intermediate clinic, do-it-yourself approach. And I know I have like a minute left, but I just want to say this was awesome. The Poseidon Fishing Association came and they helped us out, and lots of highlights here. But the goal of this kind of clinic was to teach people how to fish on their own, but we had guided expert anglers on staff to provide insight and additional expertise. And we also got to do one of the clinics at dusk as the sun was going down, and that was pretty cool. So that is an overview of the different groups and the different clinics. And one special type of, not a formal clinic, but I'm really big into building bridges among different communities when it comes to fishing. We actually had boat fishing trips where environmental educators got to go on some of the East River charters. And so that was really cool to bring the education community together with the fishing operations community, many of whom who may never have gotten on a boat before, but they're constantly in and around fish and teaching wonderfully about fish. I'll fast forward the workshops. We did one in person at Battery Park that was hosted by Battery Park City Authority. Highlights used video games to teach lore action, not tying workshops, and we did critical thinking exercises on how would you sort of intellectually, mentally dissect the fishing spot if you're fishing scientifically. And we had 3 workshops planned. 2 were canceled because of COVID, because they were planned around March. One of them we were able to then adapt and have a webinar, and Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy hosted a webinar with Chris Paparo, the fish guy. He provided not only his amazing expertise, but tremendous underwater footage of our local fishes, which was just, it was amazing to watch. And so what are we trying to do for the future? One, grow our network. In 2020, we actually had people who we never met actually reach out to us through social media and share insights. Like there was a 4-foot ocean sunfish that had washed up in the Bronx, and someone who we don't know reached out to us through our Instagram page and said, hey, you know, like, wanted to share this info with you. And so in a way, we're kind of growing in ways that we hadn't anticipated before. A lion seahorse was caught by at Gantry State Park by Environmental Education Group, and we're trying to publish our results, make the online database more accessible, and we're thinking up new projects, which I don't have time to talk about. But ultimately to say our work is far from finished. We still have been going out and but taking all the necessary precautions, wearing masks. And so if I could leave us today with some final thoughts, I do want to just really highlight these. There's nothing small about the MCDL small grant program. It planted the seeds to what we think is something really special and unique. And thank you to those of you out there who bought the license plate, because if it wasn't for you, none of this could have happened. The East River has lots of fishes and a lot of fish enthusiasts. And obviously, this has always been true to me. Fish bring people together. Stay tuned for more area stuff. The East River database is a work in progress, but it will be worth the wait. Community science is for everybody. Build bridges. Relationships are worth investing in. And if you haven't, get your MCD license plate today. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone who is shown here on this slide, and just thank you for your attention. And I apologize for going over.
Thank you, Pete. That's very, very exciting. And I don't know if we have, well, I know we're over, but if there are any questions, I encourage participants, they can use the chat box. If you might be able to take 1 or 2 questions, or, you know, afterwards, we'd certainly be happy to reach out to, you know, respective individuals. One thing I would say, Pete, is that I do see I see lots of value, but one immediate value that comes to mind about the database is the ability, building this capability to monitor changes in species distribution, especially for those species that are moving, you know, being driven, their movement is being driven by changes in climate. So I think it's very helpful to have this kind of a informal monitoring system that's available, you know, in key locations. And I think the Hudson River, you know, certainly is one of those. I don't know if you want to speak to that very quickly.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that. So I'm not an expert on species distributions in light of climate change, but there are a lot of anecdotes, you know, so like this year, you've been seeing a lot more occurrences of black drum, which, you know, occasionally can occur in and around our water, but I've seen reports upon reports of, you know, black drum. And so you do wonder, I mean, clearly there's going to be an impact, and you know, how do you best document that kind of information? I think what we're doing is one of the best ways, just having eyes out on the water and having photos to document what you see, because otherwise, you know, you'll miss it. And so I totally agree with you that that's been one of the goals, is to have high quality data and to have record and evidence for everything that we see out there. And I agree with you, Anthony, 100%. I think that what you're going to find is maybe, you know, you would expect shifts in geographic range, but for each species, it's going to be different. And so it's going to become super specific, the kind of questions we can ask. And we hope that researchers who do work in those particular fields, I hope our data could be of use in that regard. But it's a wait and see process. But the more eyes we can have out there, the better off we will be in terms of getting the best information, getting the best information out of what we have and begun to build.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Peter. That was an excellent presentation. And to further the questions, I had one question about the fishing in East River. Is it mostly catch and release? Are there fish consumption advisories posted?
There are absolutely consumption advisories. All of the consumption advisories can be found through DEC and the Department of Health for specific areas in and around the city. Generally speaking, well, all of our clinics and everything's catch and release. Personally, everything I do is catch and release. But there are some species where certain age groups and whether like age groups, men and women, there are different guidelines for different species of fish. And so off the top of my head, I don't know what I haven't fished that much this year, and then those regulations can change from year to year, but that information is readily available. But for the most part, you know, for our programs, we've encouraged catch and release. I often joke with people, I say, you know, I fished in many places, you know, across the country, and the East River, it happens to be one of the hardest places to catch fish, I believe. Because, you know, I kind of grew up fishing the East River, and then you go to other places and you're like, wow, this is easy compared to, you know, my own backyard. And part of that has to do with the fact that there's a lot of pressure. There are a lot of people who are fishing in the East River. And so that's all the more reason to release the fish. But also what our work reveals too is that we saw a lot of small fish. And so one of the questions that I have is, you know, how many of these species are using the East River like for breeding grounds or nurseries? Because, you know, we saw, for example, a tremendous amount of small black sea bass in 2019 and tautog. And so clearly, you know, and apparently that's year to year. If you talk to local anglers and stuff like that, and that information is valuable. And when we think about fishing, and I encourage release, but if individuals are within their own rights to keep and harvest fish that are recommended is okay and is within the legal guidelines. But generally speaking, yeah, so there's information out there, but for the work that we do, we often encourage release.
Any other questions?
And I have time, so I know that we're over time, but if anyone does have questions, and those of you in the audience who have time as well, I can stay on. I love talking about fish.
Pete, it's Antoinette again. So another thought I've had, and you mentioned MRIP, and one of the, let's say, concerns that's been expressed in the angling community over the year relates to, you know, whether the accuracy of MRIP. And I was just wondering if there's any way at some point down the road, you know, future thinking, if we could, you know, work with those managers to perhaps consider using this kind of data collection to help to validate what they're measuring or estimated in the field. You know, I'm just thinking of how anglers could be more engaged in data collection. And, you know, I know that one of the concerns that I've heard over the years by managers with regards to using angler self-reporting, it's about the accuracy. And, you know, I see this database as something that's a little bit more independent. It's just something to consider moving forward, you know.
I mean, I absolutely agree. And I have my foot in both worlds because I grew up fishing. Those who fish with me know that I'm an angler through and through. Like I understand the concerns. I have many friends who I have conversations about with this, but I also I also do research. I also am actively involved in environmental education. So part of the mission, and this is a personal one, is, I grew up in the city, and I've always remembered, when I was in high school, I took a college level sort of marine bio course, and the professor basically said this one thing that has forever like stuck in my brain. He said, "The ocean needs as many friends as it can get." And for some reason that just it always sticks, and knowing that I have fishing and I have my fishing friends and my fishing community, and knowing that was something that I can contribute for some of the public programs that you saw here, I could bring some of what I learned to maybe enhance some programs or help develop fishing programs. But ultimately, one of the goals of this work is to build bridges, because a lot of times I think that you have that disagreement. And one thing that I would like to know is as those disagreements arise, how many of these individuals in the different communities actually befriend each other? Are these more conversations about, conversations, between groups that may not necessarily in the moment see eye to eye, but then, if you take a step back and realize, like, hey, we're all trying to do the same thing. Fishermen and fisherwomen, anglers, they want to see their kids catch fish generation after generation, and then the fisheries regulations are that's the same goal in many respects. And you hear the stories, winter flounder, there used to be tremendous, tons of them, and not so much. Is it overfishing? Is it ecological factors? There's so many questions that could be asked, but I feel like there's a lot of growth and dialogue that can come with just kind of getting to know each other as human beings. And that's one thing that I saw through this work is you can see, like, just everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants to protect our beloved ecosystem. We all understand that our ecosystem is, at sometimes, the East River sometimes is underappreciated. Sometimes it's understudied. But if you give people the opportunity to kind of express their passions, it's, like the things that I've seen at the fishing clinics, where some of the club anglers are talking to environmental educators about the things that they've seen, and that passion that just grows, and the fishing captains that share their stories about seeing, like, lobsters, under the Whitestone Bridge. And it's just, we're all in it for the same goals. And I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but until I get too tired to do it, I want to kind of walk these, have each of my feet in the two worlds, and do what we can to bridge the communities, because it's going to be the partnership among the communities that's going to ultimately protect, preserve, and just keep everything we're trying to do sustainable and thriving. And I really do think that what we saw in 2019 in terms of bringing all of these different people together, it really was something special. And I'll forever be grateful for the MCD grant for that, because if it wasn't for that, I think a lot would not have changed.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great.
Thank you so much, Pete, for your work. And I think we're really out of time now. So
Yeah. Thanks everybody for participating, and happy Thanksgiving. And everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And this will be posted on our website shortly, and keep an eye out for our more seminars in 2021. And then until then, enjoy your holiday, and be safe, everybody, and thanks.
Thank you, Lane. Thanks, Pete. Bye.
Bye.
Lane, do you want me to stay on a little bit, or do you want to do like a check-in after the talk, kind of?
If you want to, I don't know if anybody wants to keep chatting. I'm going to stop the recording right now.
Okay.